Hi, I'm Ralph Preston, and through Stroke Buddies, we have these Tuesday recovery and science Zoom meetings, and we try and bring you some useful information for your recovery. And today we have Anna Kerry, and Anna is a stroke survivor and a well-being coach. We'll get into the difference between well-being and wellness in a minute if there is any, maybe just semantics. And she is also a stroke survivor, which I think always gives, I like the dual perspective, both sides of the coin aspect of things, as everybody who watches these meetings knows. And she was also a yoga teacher and used yoga in her recovery. And as anybody knows, again, who follows this stuff, we did 16 yoga classes and introductions to yoga and such. So be interested to hear about that. So why don't I just let Anna tell us a little bit about her stroke story. She's fairly young.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. I'll keep that little badge of fairly young. So that's nice. So yeah, I hi everyone. I'm Anna. I'm based in the UK. I was 35 when I had my stroke, which was just over 4 years ago now. So the 12th of March, 2021. Um, yeah, I got up one morning, felt fine. I went to put my workout gear on. I was going to do a workout before I started work, and my left arm felt weird when I was trying to pull my sports bra over my head, and I mean they're hard at the best of times anyway. And it was just my left arm was just feeling really weird and not like it was working properly. So I realized not too long after that, my left leg felt a bit weird as well. And I was kind of thinking, this is odd. I'm going to sit down for a second. So I sat on the edge of my bed and my head was feeling quite fuzzy. And luckily, my husband hadn't gone to work at that point. He was just getting ready for work. And I said to him as he walked past the bedroom that I didn't feel right. Um, but everything came out slurred and I couldn't speak properly. So at that point, I knew everything that was happening and I thought, gosh, yeah, I think I'm having a stroke. Because I had the very typical fast symptoms. And yeah, it kind of went from there, went kind of deteriorated from there really. I When my husband was on the phone to the paramedics to get an ambulance to us, my left arm just stopped working completely. My left leg just again stopped working. The speech was just not coming. So I was in a real panic because I thought the only thing I knew about strokes was that which is incorrect, but one, I thought that only old people had them at that point, and two, I thought the only other thing I knew about them was that people die from them, which obviously, people do die from strokes, but obviously people do survive them as well. But I didn't have very much knowledge about stroke, so I was kind of in the dark and really just scared. Um, and I suppose in the intro there, you've mentioned a little bit about yoga, and actually, even on the day of my stroke, yoga came into my journey and got really entwined with it because when I was panicking and like in a real state of panic, I could feel like my muscles were tense and my breathing wasn't great. And yeah, it was just a really anxious time whilst we were waiting for the paramedics to come. My husband, because I was very much one-sided, I couldn't sit up properly. He laid me down on our bed and he said to me, use your yoga breathing. And in that moment, when he gave me those words, and I was just grasping onto those words, thinking, yes, actually, this is something I can control in this moment that feels way out of my control. I can just lengthen my inhalation and my exhalation, which can really calm me and settle me down. It doesn't take away the fact that I'm having a stroke and it's still scary as hell. but there's something that I can kind of grasp onto here and can kind of control a little bit. So that kind of, even then on that day when it was happening, my yoga was really kind of coming into being connected with my stroke. And when I got to the hospital, unfortunately, it was 2021, so we were still in COVID sort of times. And my husband couldn't come to the hospital with me because those were still the rules at that time in the UK. So yeah, it was kind of difficult because again, neither of us knew anything about strokes. We weren't sure. Like my husband was just had to wave me off and be like, I don't know if I'm going to see my wife again. So it's kind of a lot to be taking in it like first thing in the morning. So yeah, it was very, very difficult. But for me, being in hospital on my own was probably the worst thing, because you get told that you've had a stroke, and then you've got a doctor there just giving you like a little pat on the arm, saying, as you're sobbing, because I was absolutely sobbing my heart out when she told me because I was so scared that it was going to happen again. And she's like, it's okay. And all you really want is like a hug from someone that you love in that kind of moment. So it was really difficult, but I was lucky that I was in hospital just for 4 days, because my physical recovery was really good. Everything came back really fast. Um, I don't know why, but yeah, I think I just got lucky with obviously where it was and what had happened. So yeah, my physical recovery is really good. The psychological side of it is a lot to take in and a lot to deal with. As a 35-year-old, it was kind of just like I don't know anyone. I didn't know anyone around me that had a stroke. So that was really difficult. So finding like Facebook groups and all of these types of like peer support things have been like in my early days were like really instrumental in helping me kind of with that psychological side of things. And as I started to gain all of my movements back, I realized that yes, I've gained my movements back, but I don't trust my body at all. I'd completely kind of, I suppose, disconnected from my body because my movements, they'd come back, but my left arm still felt a little bit weird and like I still had to like think about the movements. Um, so yeah, it was really difficult, but that's again where my yoga practice came in, and that's where I started um, moving my body as like a moving meditation because it was too difficult in this moment to sit in silence in meditation with all those thoughts going through my head about, oh my God, what's happened, what do I do going forwards, like all that uncertainty that you get when you've had a stroke because you just don't know what's going to happen going forwards. All of that's like going on in your head. So it was just, I was like, I can't sit in meditation and kind of think about these sort of things. So I moved my body as like a move in meditation with my yoga practice. So just very gentle, very gentle movements. And yeah, my practice kind of just progressed from there really, and bringing it again back into my daily life, after the stroke. And it's just, yeah, it's been one of the things that has been just instrumental in my recovery really. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they tend to focus. I don't suppose it's any different in the UK, but here they tend to focus on the physical aspect of things and the whole mental side of having your life turned upside down on you isn't really addressed. So,
Yeah.
sometimes I ask people raise their hand if they got physical therapy, and most hands go up. Okay, keep it up if you got occupational therapy. Most half the hands go down. If you had
Mm.
speech issues and you got speech therapy, keep your hand up. Okay, who had mental therapy? All the hands go down.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just we just don't. Um, I don't know if they're focused, if it's like an insurance thing on getting us moving and getting us home so they can stop paying, or. or what, but the whole mental side of things is not addressed as well
Yeah.
as it should be. So,
It's similar in the UK, and it's something that I'm really passionate about talking about, because yes, I like I say, I've been really lucky with my physical recovery, and I think that there is a lot of focus on physical recovery, and rightly so. There should be a lot of focus on physical recovery, and I think that's because this is how our world is very ableist, isn't it? This is how we, interact with the world is through our physical body. And if we can't move through it in the way that able-bodied people can, then it is it can be a very difficult place for people. And I think there's definitely a lot of focus to get people, up and walking and moving and all of those things. And that's great. But I think that the psychological side of it, because you can't see it, and because there's even though we're getting better, there's always that stigma around mental health. And we are getting a lot better at talking about it, but I think because of that, there's still this thing there that it just doesn't, it kind of just gets brushed under the carpet a little bit. And it's just having a stroke is a blooming major thing to happen to someone, no matter what age you are. It's a big thing and it's a big life-changing event for people. And to not have that psychological, support there is really difficult. I think just an example of this for me personally, I've had a lot of support through like different things that I do, obviously with my yoga practice and my wellbeing coaching. And so I've got lots of tools and things to help with me, to help me through the psychological side of things. But there's still things that I need help with. And I went to speak to my stroke consultant last year. And I got signed off from my stroke consultant last year. But before I got signed off from him, I said there's still some things that I'm struggling with a little bit, health anxiety, a couple of other like bits that I was kind of like, I just feel like this is the last piece of the puzzle and I need to kind of just work on these things. So like the psychological recovery again. And he was just like, this is great. This is, yeah, really, really good. I'm really happy to refer you to a neuropsychologist if we had one in our hospital. And they didn't have anyone for me to see. And he reeled off a whole list of other therapists that they have for like physical therapy, occupational therapists, all of those. And yet they didn't have anyone for psychological recovery. And I was just like, I was completely baffled. But I mean, my consultant, he is an amazing consultant. And he was like, I am like by hook or by crook, I will find someone for you. And he did. He found me someone, bless him. But it shouldn't be that hard. There should just be someone, and it's something that, yeah, is something that I'm really kind of very vocal about. I'll very happily talk about my own struggles because I think when you talk about these internal struggles that we have, it helps other people to realize, like just get obviously this peer support, it's so valuable. It helps other people know that they're not on their own with it and that, maybe I've got some tools that might help you. You might have some tools that might help me, and it's just that sharing of information with peer support that I really love. So yeah, psychological recovery over this side of the pond is no better than what your side is by the sounds of it. So yeah.
it sounds very similar to what we've got going on here. I mean, we'll talk a bit about like long-term healing because it's a long-term process. And but one thing I always think about is, people who are having mental struggles aren't able to embrace their physical and occupational and speech therapy in the same way as if they were getting help
Yeah.
there. So if they're so focused on the physical side of things, having some, mental help I think would help facilitate the physical healing as
Yeah.
well.
It really It really does. Like I think when I've worked with stroke survivors in the past, I always think of it as like a holistic approach is what people need. And it, because I think if you think about it in really basic terms, if you're feeling really anxious, like what happens to your body? Like you have a physiological reaction there. So your muscles tense up when you're anxious. And that's not going to be helpful for if you want to get walking again, you know. So it's like there is these really like physical things that really come up when you're not dealing with the, you know, the anxiety, the psychological side of things. So I think it's really important that there is that holistic approach that we're covering with people for stroke recovery, because it does, I think it really does impact on the physical recovery as well if you're not addressing the psychological side of it.
It only makes sense. I mean, we are a sum of the parts. You know, we're not individual parts. So, yeah, holistic
Yeah.
approach makes sense. Now, when I was looking at your website, I know you were a yoga teacher before your stroke, but I didn't see anything about whether or not you were a well-being coach. You use well-being,
Mm.
which is fine.
Yeah.
A well-being coach before your stroke, or if your stroke was something that drove you to that in terms of helping other people. I know you're trying to help other people through this struggle now, so maybe were you a well-being coach before?
No, I wasn't. So I was a yoga teacher. I qualified, which is just bad timing. So I qualified to be a yoga teacher in August 2020, which again ended up being going through the blooming pandemic time with that as well. And I thought the most challenging thing that was going to be like setting up a little yoga business on the side whilst we're going through a pandemic. I thought that was going to be really challenging. And then about 6 months later, I had my stroke. So I'd only been teaching about 6 months or so before I had my stroke. So obviously had to put everything on hold. And at that point, I'd done my 200 hour, which is kind of like the base level for yoga teacher training is 200 hours. So I'd done my 200 hours, which meant I could teach my yoga and do my thing. And then I had my stroke, and obviously I had to put everything on hold, all of my teaching. So yeah, when I came back and started to look at things, I started to look at things differently. And so the first thing I did was a some more training in yoga, and I did a trauma-informed yoga teacher training course because I was really interested in how the trauma of the stroke had affected me as a person. And so that gave me some really amazing tools to kind of help me through my own trauma, but then also to kind of help other people as well through their trauma of the stroke. And so, yeah, so I did some extra training in that. I did some extra training in accessible yoga. So doing adapting things for like chairs and things like that. And then I started to think, is there more that I can offer and more that I can kind of do for people other than having just the yoga? And that's where I came into doing the wellbeing training, so the wellbeing coach training. And it was kind of just I really wanted to be able to offer a little bit more to people. And so that's why I did that training. So really, you know, having a stroke, yes, it's kind of rubbish at times that that this has happened. And there's definitely things that it's brought me that haven't been great, like uncertainty, worry. You know, I ended up having to have a heart operation to fix the reason for the stroke. You know, all of these things, but it's given me an awful lot as well. So it's given me an amazing community of people that I've met so many amazing people since this. And all of these new skills that I've got and tools that I've got that I've learned because of my stroke. And I don't think I would have possibly gone down the route that I've gone down if it wasn't for my stroke. So I'm very grateful for it for that because I love this route that I've gone down. So yeah, in a way, I am quite grateful that I had the stroke, even though it's brought some rubbish stuff as well.
We'll come back to that grateful, and there's some positivity sometimes in stroke, but I know
Yeah.
the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you to elaborate on it anyway, which is, um, what was your motivation to do that? To, become a well-being coach and help other people?
I think I've always wanted to help people. I was just writing a blog post the other week about the different types of jobs I wanted to do as a child, which were just wild to think back. Some of that, one of them was an ice cream lady. I'm not quite sure where that came from. But I've always had this urge and want to kind of help. And so coming into doing yoga and teaching yoga, I found such benefits from it that it was one of those where you just like, oh, I just want to tell other people about this and get other people doing this because it's so amazing. And and I think that when the reason that I went down the wellbeing coach training as well is because when you go through something like a stroke or any big life event, like really like massive life changing stuff, it's hard, it's really difficult. And I think that we all need someone there to kind of support us and to kind of, sometimes just take us by the hand and just guide us out of that dark place. Because we've all been in that dark place after having a stroke, I'm sure, because it's hard, and to be able to help people to come out of that place and to be able to show them that there is another way forwards and that life doesn't have to end because we've had a stroke. I know that, I've been incredibly lucky with my physical recovery, but I still think that even if you've not been so lucky with your physical recovery, there's still lots of things that we can do and to adapt and change. And to be able to help people to do that is just an absolute gift. Like it's just, I love doing this stuff because it's just so rewarding to see people when they come to me and, they're in a really bad place. And for me to be able to offer them something to help is just an amazing thing. And, I have these tools, so why wouldn't I share them with people? Um, yeah, that's just, yeah, I love it. I love doing this stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the positive things. Not for anybody out there listening, we're not talking about the. I wouldn't wish a stroke on anybody. I wouldn't have mine in order to learn the things that I learned from it. But once it's happened to you, sometimes it helps to be a little aware of the positivity of things in your life. I know that in my case. It slowed me down a good bit, and I started noticing people around me more. And because I was going through a life-changing event, all of a sudden, they'd been there before, of course, but all of a sudden, all these people going through life-changing events, popped on. I became aware of them everywhere, and I also think it made me more empathetic particularly to people going through life-changing
Mm.
experiences like a stroke, and like you, I decided that I've always liked to help people. So I said, well, I'd make videos. I learned a lot from my experience, and so I'm going to set off to trying to help people. You mentioned on your website something about it brought more softness into your life. So what do you think was the positive parts of the the stroke experience? There's nothing positive about stroke.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it, for people, I think, to think about it in a good way, because it is so life-changing. For me, I I was very much, even from the very beginning, okay, I need to get something decent out of this. I need to get some good out of it, because this has been absolutely horrendous, but I'm determined to get something good from this situation, that I've, found myself in. And I think there's definitely something there about mindset. I'm not saying that we have to be positive all the time because that's not practical, because stroke recovery is hard and just rubbish at times. But I do think my mindset has really helped me to kind of be not positive all the time, but just to be in a space where it's like, okay, let's look for the opportunities rather than let's look at what's gone wrong. Yeah, like I said, I was very early on, I was like, I need to get some good out of this. And I think what it's given me, um, again, I think I was just talking about this the other day. It allowed me some time to get off the hamster wheel of life. So life is busy. I was before my stroke, I had a full-time job, teaching yoga on the side, family life. Yeah, so life was busy. And I've always been very hard on myself. I've always been had a negative voice in my head. And yeah, it's just something that it was always there for me. And having a stroke actually allowed me to be gentler and kinder to myself, because it allowed me to just slow down a bit and just think, okay, well, actually, how do I feel? Rather than just pushing through, because that's something that I would always say, oh, I'm just plowing on through, and I would never really think about myself, and consider my feelings and consider what I wanted and lots of things like that. So I think my stroke, yeah, it gave me that time and space to take, obviously I took some time off work, and just to kind of think about things, and it's just given me that kindness and that softness to myself, that it doesn't have to, like, I don't have to keep doing all the time. I can rest. Rest is very, very productive, because we're in this world that society tells us we've got to be productive and we've got to do and we've got to be on the go all the time. And that's how we're valuable to society. And I think that going through this has allowed me to take a step back and be like, actually, resting is really important. And I can listen to my body and my needs, and when you listen to your body and your needs and you take action based on that, that's really empowering. It feels so good to be able to do that. And that's something that I will be grateful for my stroke, because maybe I would have got there in the end. I don't know, if after without having a stroke, I would have got to this space of kindness and compassion for myself. But the stroke really allowed me to have that time and space with myself and to realize what I'm capable of doing and what I'm capable of getting through. So there is definitely some good that's come out of it. And I think, like I said earlier, I don't think I would have possibly gone down this path that I'm on now, had it not been for the stroke. So I think, yeah, just really, I suppose, thinking about life, I tortured myself for ages with a photo on my phone of just a stupid little selfie of me and my husband in the garden. And we took it the weekend before my stroke. And I used to torture myself looking at that, being like, oh, look at us there. We were so happy. We had no stresses, no worries. And I'm like, that's not true. Like we had stresses and worries before my stroke. So I think sometimes we tend to look at our life before the stroke, maybe with some rose-tinted glasses on, to be think like, oh, everything was really perfect then. And actually, when we do take a step back and look and think, oh no, actually, maybe that wasn't so great, or oh no, I could have changed that, and and that's now how I look at things now, is like finding this new path to walk on. And it can be better than the life that you had before, because I know my life is much better now, because I'm so much kinder to myself, and so yeah, just so much more in tune with what I'm doing, what I need. And that, to some people, might sound selfish, but self-care is never selfish. So it is about listening to you and your body, and then coming from that place and seeing like where you want to go and what you want to do going forwards. There's lots of opportunity.
Well, it sounds like you used it as an while you were looking at things, you used it as an opportunity to dig deeper and deal with all the things in your life. You know,
Yeah,
like I say, maybe
yeah,
you probably would have gotten there, but maybe the stroke sped up the process by
yeah,
take, take,
yeah.
taking a look at it. So,
Mm.
um, so how did you go about like at some point, in order to offer things to other people, you have to, conceptualize them, which of course you did by living through it. But then at some point, you put together some of your experiences and built them into some of the programs that you offer. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. So I've done a few different things. So I really, the first thing I really started with was yoga and stroke and, how that can really help with recovery. So again, with that, it was very much based around some of my own experiences, of yoga and stroke, and what has helped me. What I did with that original program that I did was very much we kind of like we create I created it in a way that it was over a period of weeks, and I think what helped with it was that we kind of went in at the base level of let's look at movement and kind of let's look at just bringing our awareness back to our body so that we can feel connected. And as the weeks progressed, was really where we got a little bit deeper. And some of the other aspects of yoga that are really helpful, I found, is like mantra. So that's been like mantra's been a really important part of it was an important part of my life before my stroke, and it was something that I really enjoyed when I was doing my training. So that's something that I really brought in and lent into with stroke recovery, because you can use a mantra to just help to calm your mind. Um, I think like mantra is, I'm sure it's translated as mind tool. Um, so it really helps to calm the mind. And when you're repeating something, and it could be as simple as I am whole, which for a stroke survivor is really, I suppose, good for them, because you don't feel like a whole person when you can't feel or use half of your body if that's been something that's been affected. So bringing different things in like that really kind of opened up yoga for people, and all of the sessions that I did for that was very much like either chair based or two different like different levels so that people could pick and choose which kind of was right for them. So that was really kind of where everything started, was just doing like a yoga course. And then kind of progressed into doing a few different things. I've done a workshop for your nervous system. That's something that I am quite passionate about, again, is talking about how we can regulate our nervous systems. And so from that workshop, I then created like a little workbook, which is for sale on Amazon. And that was something that was, yeah, really from my trauma training that I did. So I really gathered that from there. And again, my own experiences, as in my psychological recovery and what has helped me through my recovery with that. So that everything kind of stems a little bit from my own experiences. And then just kind of I build on it with the tools that I've learned through all of these different modalities that I've been taught as well. And then, yeah, it's just everything. I think all of these things and all of my work kind of, I suppose, progresses and changes as I progress and change and like go down my recovery journey, and how it weaves and changes a little bit. So then obviously when my wellbeing coaching stuff came in as well, it was let's bring some more stuff in to help people. And I do like a one-to-one program, that's for women, to do with again going through a life-changing event, life's challenges, but finding a path forwards through that psychological side of things as well. And it's really with that, it's very much about that kindness, that compassion for ourselves, that how we're talking to ourselves, how often my favorite saying at the moment is our thoughts aren't fact. Because I think a lot of the time we assume that what we're thinking is true, and it's definitely not, because we all have that critic in our head that tells us not very nice things about ourselves. And so that's something that I've really kind of leaned into a lot recently with some of my work. So yeah, there's lots of different things that I've done as like I say, as my journey has kind of twisted and turned and gone in different directions. And so it kind of evolves with me, with my work. And yeah, there's some things like on my website, there's some yoga classes on there that I've done with some with a charity based in the UK, and lots of just me chatting to camera, free resources about different aspects of usually psychological recovery, because that's what I'm really passionate about. So yeah, there's lots of different things that I've done, and it's just taken me on a real journey, I suppose.
When you were talking about being out in the garden, just had stressors in your life, and our lives aren't perfect before stroke, but it seems to me that people tend to, well, they get stuck, and they get because they want to go back, and we all know you can't go back. And I think that people tend to glorify their pre-stroke life. They don't tend to remember the thing that, life's an ongoing. There's wonderful things about life, don't get me wrong, but I mean, we're always going through challenges in life. Maybe nothing like a stroke, but it's not like our lives were perfect and then they were completely disrupted. Um,
Yeah,
and I think that coming to some level of acceptance is really key to being able to move on in any way, but not just mentally, but also physically. People get hung up there. Yeah, you don't go to physical therapy. You don't do therapy at home. You don't do the things you should do if you're sitting there stuck. So
yeah,
how do you help people get over that, for lack of a better term, being
yeah.
stuck, wanting to return to something that they're idealizing and you can't go back.
Yeah, I think it's so difficult, isn't it? Because I think that change is a normal part of life. Everything's in constant fluctuation and everything's changing all the time. And I think the problem with this having a stroke is that change is thrust upon you in a very brutal way. And it can be extremely hard for people, because it's like 1 minute you're okay and the next minute it's really not. Whereas say changing as in getting older, that's like a gradual process for people. So you kind of building up to it type thing. And when it's thrust upon you like this, it can be very difficult, very jarring for people. And I think the thing that I think people think about with recovery, and I think this is really important, is that you can still accept where you are now and still strive to move forwards. But if you're not accepting where you are now and you're just constantly looking back, then that's going to hinder the recovery process. So I think what I always say is that acceptance isn't a passive form of giving up. It's a way to just be here and present, and to be able to work on what you need to work on to move you to where you do want to be in the future. And I think that's really important for people to know, because I think when you say acceptance, people think, well, I don't just want to like roll over and accept that this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. That is not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that you can accept this level of where you are now, but you can still try your absolute hardest and work your absolute best at that physical recovery that you want, if that's what it is that you want, or psychological recovery that you want. You can still work your absolute hardest on that to be moving forwards to where you do want to be. So it's difficult for people, and it's something that I always talk about with people, and it is something that comes up an awful lot for people that I've spent time with. But that is always my go-to to them, to really get them to understand what acceptance is and why it's so important. Because I think like when you understand more about why something is important, then it kind of clicks a little bit better, and it kind of helps people to then think, oh, okay, it's not maybe what I thought it was, and I can still move forwards. Because I think that's the fear for everyone, is kind of, I think, being stuck where they are in that moment where it feels horrible, everything's hard, and that's the issue, I think, for people, is that they're just so scared of staying in that space that then they can't seem to accept that that's the space they're in. But that's the most important thing that they need to do to strive to move forwards again.
Right. For some reason, people equate acceptance with like quitting, like like
Yes.
like you're gonna give up, and that's not the case at all. Getting them to understand that nuance is
Mm,
difficult.
yeah.
We speak the same language, by the way. You keep saying it, and I'm going, well, I preach that. I preach that. That's absolutely what
Yeah.
I found to be true. So,
Yeah.
but I think that part of the whole thing is that people tend to focus on, well, okay, I basically feel like if you don't come to some level of acceptance, then you don't um, dream. You don't think about the future. And then you're not planning, and then you're not really moving in any direction until you come to at least some level of acceptance about what happened to you. It's hard to
Mm,
move on either physically or emotionally. And
mm,
I think that people
yeah.
tend to turn the whole thing into a loss. Again, I'm not saying anybody should go have a stroke because it's wonderful or anything, but I think it's real helpful to focus on the things that you can do as opposed to the things that you can't do. And you have to
Yeah.
celebrate small victories and all kinds of little things that you're trying to get the spiral to spiral up again.
Yeah.
Life
Yeah.
isn't static. It never sits still. So what you
Yeah.
want to do is get things spiraling up in a positive direction. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to look at what you can do. I went through this bunch around my 6 month anniversary, which was tough because I listened to other people, and my 1 year
Mm,
anniversary, where I decided I wasn't going to listen to anybody. I was going to celebrate being alive, and huge changes in those 6 months. Um, I was very lucky in that I reached some level of acceptance before I even left the rehab hospital, and I know that most people don't do that. I wish I knew exactly how I did that. It happened in my brain. Um,
yeah.
I guess I'm a big believer in there's some things you can't do anything about. And so you need to focus on the things that you do have some control over rather
Yeah.
than being frustrated about the things that you don't have control over.
Yeah, I think that's such a massive thing, isn't it, for stroke recovery, is definitely that focus on what you can do rather than what you can't. And I think that that's massively important, for people to actually to adopt that way of thinking, because I suppose the brain's like Teflon, isn't it? It's like the Teflon and Velcro situation, where you've got like the Velcro is like the negative things, and the brain like holds on to those, and the positives like Teflon, where it just slides away. So you kind of you have like, and that's how the brain's wired to do that, because obviously it's trying to keep us safe. And yeah, although we don't have tigers running after us now, thank God. But it that's how the brain's wired. So it's hard to kind of flip that. You have to be really intentional about flipping that. And so flipping that into thinking about, not what you can't do, flipping it into thinking about what you can do. But it's such a, yeah, that's a really great way to get through this, I think, because it's, if you focus on what you can't do, then that might be a lot, and that's going to be difficult for you, and it's going to make you stay stuck, definitely.
You need to switch the Teflon and the Velcro sides and get the
Yeah.
negativity to slide off and the positivity
Yes.
to stick. But I
Yes,
mean, it's
definitely.
easy for us to sit here and say that. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody here had a stroke, so everybody here knows that, it's a lot easier to talk about it than it is to make it happen
Yeah.
in your life because you got to get your brain to cooperate. You got to get
Yeah.
all that negativity to
That's
stop.
difficult. And I think it's really, I feel like it is really important to acknowledge that it is difficult. Stroke recovery is hard. It's something that you're going to have to dig a hell of a lot deeper to get through because it's difficult. Even, like I say, with my physical recovery, yep, fine. But psychologically, it's hard and it is a lot for people. And so it is easy to kind of sit here and say, you need to just flip that thinking around. Well, that is difficult for people. And so I think that it's important, even for me, sometimes I'll still slip into old ways of thinking and old habits because our bodies, our brains, they're all one big habit. So it's just trying to, for me, I always just try and make sure I can um, slow down enough to recognize when these things are becoming more habitual again. And so that I can then take that step back and be like, all right, okay, no, I need to get these practices back in place. And, so even someone that is, like there's a well-being coach and a yoga teacher, there's still struggles at times, there's still definite times when I don't have it all together. And, it goes off the handle. And, I mean, literally just a few weeks ago, it was not long after my fourth anniversary, and I had a huge panic attack in the middle of my parents' kitchen because I thought I was having another stroke. So I did go to the hospital and I wasn't having another stroke. I had a weird feeling in my arm. So I got myself checked out and it was all good. But there's still things and times where it really affects me. So I think it's important for everyone to know that it's okay to feel like that and it's okay to have these thoughts and these feelings around stroke recovery and that it being hard. But I think what I would try and say is not to get stuck there, not to get stuck in those thoughts. Try and think of one little thing that you can do. Because I think that's what these sort of things are about is making them manageable for people. And if it's just one little thing, if you're in that really negative space, what's one thing I can do today for my recovery or for my well-being? And it could just be something as simple as taking 5 minutes out for yourself just to kind of sit and breathe. It could be simple, just something really simple. But it's then building on those little small habits that you can make.
Yeah, I try to never make light of the process. It's not a simple process, and everybody's going to do it on their own schedule, and they're also going to do it when they're ready. It's the
Yeah.
old, you can lead a horse to water thing. My favorite
Yes.
meme last year was you can lead a person to what was a picture of a horse and said you could lead a person to water, but you can't, I mean, to knowledge, but you can't make them think, uh, which
Yes.
rhymes with drink. But, the point is people have to come to this on their own terms and in their own time. And, you
Yeah.
know, relatives and friends and people who don't seem to understand that it's a process. It's not
Mm.
like the flu. The last thing you should ever tell somebody is just get over it, because
Yes.
because it's just not that simple. That's the number
Helpful.
one thing on the list of not telling stroke survivors, not telling people who are depressed, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you haven't walked a mile in somebody else's shoes, you really don't know what they're going through. And I look at it that way, even though I went through a stroke, I don't know what somebody else went through. Also,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I got to acceptance fairly quickly. That does not mean that other people can. We all
Mm. Yeah.
have different things that happen to us, and we have different capabilities and ways that we deal with things. So
Mm.
you got to be real.
Yeah.
You got to tiptoe around being judgmental. I think.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think it is really important to think about that. Yes, we've, all of us here, we've had a stroke, but none of us are the same, and none of us have had the same experience because we've all had different life experiences while leading up to the stroke, and different experiences we go through our stroke and through our recovery. So yeah, I think the good thing about this having a community of stroke survivors is that we, yes, we've all been through a stroke, so we've all got some similar experiences somewhere. But all of our strokes are different. However, there is kind of like a little thread that ties us all together as stroke survivors, I think, which is really nice to have. But it's always great to acknowledge that everyone's stroke is different and it's affected everyone differently. And it is, like you say, you can't force these things on people about how they should be recovering and what they should be doing. For me, I say I let people, like, I tell my story a lot. I let people know what's happened to me. I let people know what's helped me. And if they want some help from me, they can come and find me. They can come and ask me anything. I'm not going to force what I've done on other people, because just because it's worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. Because everyone's very different. And I think when you get round to kind of that forcing of people and forcing of doing things, again, that's a very like um hard way of like looking at things, because you're really like, if you're trying to force something, that's never going to end well. I don't think. So it's very much just like the stuff I do, it's very invitational. This is what I think, this is what I feel when I do these things. Um, Come join me if that feels like something that kind of resonates with you. And if it doesn't, then that's fine. You can go your own way and do your own thing, and figure out things for yourself. And I am more than happy to come back to someone and be like, oh, so what are you doing, what's helping, to for me to learn what's helping other people. So yeah, it's I think it's really important that we do take that time to kind of acknowledge the differences, and that what works for one might not work for everyone.
Well, and I'm sure you still have to get people over the hump, acceptance hump, but guess when they reach out to you, they're unhappy with their situation or ready for some change. So at
Yeah.
least at the point they contact you, I would assume, I'm making assumptions here, that they contact you, that they've realized that um, they're not happy with where they are and they want to
Mm.
see what they can do to improve their situation. That's not a teeny step. That's a big step. So
Massive one. Yeah.
you've already got them. They're already at that level. So
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
anybody here got any questions or thoughts on all this? I bet not. We'll see. Um, I'll just take a minute to say that for everybody out there in YouTube land, if you want to know more about Anna or Anna, sorry, you say Anna more than Anna, um,
Okay, whichever.
and you want to contact her, I put all of contact information, bios, and websites and things like that in the description underneath this video. So if you want to find out more about her work and reach out to her possibly, then that's how you can do that. And I'm just saying that as well as giving people a chance to think of some questions, not trying to end the whole thing. Uh, so anybody got anything to add to the discussion?
Yeah.
No? Okay. All right. Well, maybe I am trying to end the discussion. If you and I could go on probably for a long time, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say you just have to shut me up at some point.
Well, I think that the thing about community is, I guess, even though our strokes are different, you know, there's certain basic realizations that we come to, and I think both you and I come to some of those same basic realizations. And the thing about community is, even if somebody didn't have the exact same stroke or the exact same challenges as you, you know that they went through it, so they understand at least on some level what you're dealing with. They know that you're dealing with a big mess like they had to deal with. So
Yeah.
I think people.
I have one question, Ralph, I'd
Sure,
like to ask.
sure.
Is that what is your name again?
Uh,
Anna.
Your name,
Yeah.
Anna?
Yeah.
Okay, hi. Um, you mentioned in the beginning of your talking that you were afraid to have more strokes. And in your line of work, the wellness, how did you overcome that? Was it the wellness specifically that helped you, or you're still dealing with that fear? So you mentioned in the beginning that you were, oh no, I'm going to have more. I think for many stroke survivors, that is a legitimate fear, and it does happen. So I was wondering how you approach that for yourself.
Yeah.
Good
Thanks,
question.
Mindy. Yeah, great question. Yeah. Um, Interestingly, I had the fear in the beginning, very much so. And I think that's same for probably everyone here. That's quite a heightened fear in that early stages that this is going to happen again. And I think because I didn't know what had caused my stroke at that point, then there's that fear because you just don't know why this has happened. When I found out why I'd had the stroke, so I had the hole in my heart, which was something that I found out about and had to live with for another year and a half before I had it closed. That was quite a fearful time, I suppose, for me. And I think because I think when you think about the fear of having another stroke, it brings on it's this anxiety inducing, isn't it? Causes anxiety because you're thinking about the future. And I think, like I say, underneath the anxiety is that the underlying feeling is fear. So what I tend to try and do whenever I've got that is I will talk to myself, and kind of one of the tools that I always use is when I'm feeling anxious or scared, I'll use this tool that is very much like acknowledging that fear and acknowledging that anxiety. And actually, when you start to acknowledge these things, they actually lessen a little bit, which sounds really weird when you think about it. I remember when I first got taught this and I was like, that's never going to work. And when I actually started to do it for myself, and I was like, I started to feel anxious because I'd got this funny feeling in my head. This did happen to me at one point. I had a funny feeling in my head, and I was like, oh my God, I'm having another stroke. So when that fear comes in, what I do for myself, and because this is how I do things. I always place a hand on my heart, my chest, because that's quite comforting. So it's that soothing touch. So I comfort myself, and I talk to this fear and this anxiety, and I'm like, yeah, I can feel that there's something within me that feels anxious or that feels fearful. Um, and I say it in those words, as in there's something within me, rather than saying, oh my God, I feel so anxious or I'm so scared. Because when you say it in that way, you really merge with those feelings, and that's not good for us. So when I say, oh, there's something within me that feels a bit anxious and that feels a bit fearful at the moment, it allows me to separate myself from it a little bit. And this is how it can kind of lessen for us. And I just sit with it, and I'm just like, I'll have my eyes closed, and I'm just like, yep, I can feel you. You're there. I know. It's okay. And it's okay, and no wonder, no wonder you're feeling like this. You've been through a lot. And I think it's that compassion that I can now offer myself, which I could never do before my stroke. That compassion that I can offer myself and say, yeah, that's really difficult. This does feel really difficult, and it is really hard. And that kind of helps me in those moments where it does feel like it's like, oh my God, and once you can start to acknowledge and separate yourself a little bit from it and to lessen that feeling, that really helps with me in those moments where I feel fearful or where I feel like, where my anxiety's gone off the roof because I think I'm having another stroke. That kind of really helps to bring me back, getting away from the feeling of fear of another stroke. I'm still working on that. I didn't realize I
You're
was still working on it until the other week when I had a panic attack because I thought I was having another stroke. But that is something that I'm still working on. And I think it's something that possibly will always be in the back of my mind, and could possibly always be in the back of other people's minds. But I think it's about not letting that control us and not letting that fear become more present. So I'd be quite happy if it just kind of, stayed as a background thing, just not really thinking about it too much, but maybe every now and again it might come up.
If I
But
if I had heard you correctly in the beginning, you also mentioned, although you didn't say the words, I just assumed by your story that you had your stroke in your sleep, like at night, and you woke up feeling unwell. And I think that that is something that could resonate with many people also. Because I say that because not everyone, I don't know the numbers, but not everyone would say, "Oh, I'm having a stroke." I didn't know I was having a stroke, and it was a daytime. It wasn't nighttime, but still, like you, no, I think it was 8 hours later. Oh, Mindy, your face is falling, falling off. You're talking funny and you're kind of dazed out. It was only somebody picking up those kind of things that I realized that. So I believe that like you, the fear is there, and sometimes we just don't know. But you're right. You are very fortunate, even though you had your stroke at night in the morning. Some that some hours and hours went by, the damage that was done. So I I
yeah.
I honor you. You've done a lot of work.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think so I didn't have my stroke in my sleep. I'd just woke up and then I had the stroke. So it was I think about 5 minutes after waking. But I think it is difficult when I suppose if you're not having the typical fast symptoms, this is something that I hear about a lot from people. If you're not having the typical fast symptoms, then you delay getting treatment and going to the hospital and things like that, which then brings on a worse outcome because obviously now we all know that stroke is very time sensitive. So yeah, it's difficult though when if it does happen in your sleep or if you don't have the typical fast symptoms and you don't recognize it. I was very, very lucky that I did present with the fast symptoms. And although, I mean, even presenting with those symptoms, the doctors still told me it was a migraine. Um, so
Well,
I think a lot of young people get it's a
yeah,
migraine. It's okay.
we've touched on a couple of other subjects today that are, subjects all their own, like what, what happens to young people when they go to the ER. They often dismiss them. Of course, you don't know what to say or what not to say because not everybody's prepared to have a stroke. Especially in young people, it comes as a big surprise. So, but if you mention migraines or allergies or something, they'll blame it on that like right away. Oh, oh, you have migraines? Oh, it's just a migraine. Go home. I
Yeah.
don't know how to improve that, but somehow we need to improve that. And then another thing we touched on that's a huge subject is the whole concept of invisible deficits. Well, you look fine. How come you're not
Yeah.
over it yet? You know? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, some of the things that people say are just the worst.
Oh, they are.
They really are. They're just, yeah. And I know it comes from maybe it always comes from a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge. And I suppose, I didn't know anything about strokes before I had one myself.
Good.
And, I mean, I suppose I have knowledge of like mental illness and things like that, and like hidden disabilities. Like my mum suffers with some, so I luckily I feel like I was quite well informed on that type of thing anyway. But a lot of people aren't and just aren't exposed to hidden disabilities, and people with hidden disabilities. So I think yeah, it's hard, but it does tend to fall on us as stroke survivors to kind of educate people, as if we haven't got enough to be getting on with. But yeah, it
My
does.
my friend, sorry, Anna. My friend is 35 and she just had a baby. But she was 6 months pregnant when she had her stroke. I'm finding it hard to difficult ways to now to continue to support her. If someone says again, "You're lucky, you're so young," she'll punch them in the head. But
Yeah.
it's hard to support her because she is young. People tell her she's lucky she's young. And how do how do I continue to support my friend who has so many sits that you cannot see? And uh, it's really tough, Albert. It's tough.
I think in these I feel like for people that are really struggling, and for people to then say, "Oh, well, you're young, you're really lucky," like, and all of this, it's really diminishes what they're going through, and it really takes away from what they're feeling. And I think that the best thing that we can do as friends or family for people like that is to hold space for them. If they're feeling in that way, that they might be feeling really crappy one day, to hold space for them and to know that that's okay, and that you're there for them, to be able to just, it might be that they just need a rant about someone that said, "Oh, you're really young, you're really lucky." It might be that they just need to have a rant to you about that. And it's so, and I think that's how we can really be there and be supportive of people. And also, if there was someone that had a physical disability, we would ask them, how, like, what can I do? How can I help? Is there any way that I can accommodate you in a better way? And I think that should be the same for hidden disabilities too. Like, how can I help? What can I do to make things easier for you? Is there anything that I can do? Or do you just need me to hold some space for you? So I think that's a really important role for people when they're going through hidden disabilities, uh, mental health challenges, that type of thing.
I would like to touch on on the topic right here. Just like what Mindy was saying, having a support system is imperative, especially with young stroke survivors. I apologize for being late today. But once again, Anna, right? Anna. So I suffered a massive stroke when I was 23. So
Mm,
I'm 29 years post-stroke now. So I'll be celebrating my 30th year in August. But just like when Mindy was saying, it's hard to really support like the younger individuals
mm,
because the more mental emotional stuff that we go through.
mm,
Like I said, you're young also,
mm,
and just because the label that people wear that, well, you're glad you're young. It doesn't matter. It's nothing
mm,
that you can put a band-aid on our head and think that we're going to be okay in a couple of months or years and stuff. This is a
mm,
lifelong transition in our lives, with some difficulties, with some deficits, it's a traumatic brain injury. So,
mm,
so we have to, like I said, as younger individuals, you know, spread the word, because, I counsel other younger stroke survivors who, they don't get the support system that they
mm,
need, just like what Mindy said.
Yeah.
there's no support system for younger individuals because our society says stroke survivors they only happen in your 60s and 70s and 80s and stuff. So
Yeah.
we have to change the narratives around here because our society is based on so much about stress now,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
everybody's trying to work take care of their families, even like like I said, I suffered my setback when I was 23, right after I graduated from college. So when you're in college, what are you doing? Eating ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. So we're not eating properly because we don't think about that.
Yeah.
When you're 23, you're invincible. Like, okay, that's going to happen to me. I can, like what the doctor said, he was like, oh, I have food poisoning.
Mm.
So they gave
Yeah.
me some medication and threw um threw me out the door. And I was throwing clots in my head then, So this is why, it is important to have these information, these platforms that share this information for people,
Yeah.
because like what Mindy said, you know, her friend, was having a baby and stuff like that. Some of these doctors don't know. So
Mm.
they don't know until it happened to them or one of their loved ones, and they say, "Okay, maybe I missed something." So
Yeah.
this is like I said. I'm glad. I'm glad I'll be able to. This was recorded, so I can come back and look at your presentation, But I just said like when I seen your age and stuff, and like I said, it's I think it's more for us also because we still trying to navigate uh the rest of our lives with this,
Yeah.
you know. So and this is difficult. Yes, go ahead, Ralph. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I get the
Yeah.
whole thing about, when you're younger, you have,
Mhm.
physically you might be able to bounce back better or whatever, but I kind of disagree with the whole thing about, that you would, well, first of all, it'd be great if nobody had strokes, but it seems to me like the later you have it in life, the better off you are because even though you might not have the additional, the youth on your side physically, when you're 23 or 35, like Demont and Anna, you've got a whole lot more life in front of you than somebody who's 65 or 70. Somebody who just, retired, I mean, they can say, oh boy, just retired and I had a stroke or whatever, but they're not concerned about having kids, raising the kids they have, their career. There's lots of things out there, more life ahead of a young person. So, of course, we don't have control over them, because if we could turn the dial to later in life, I'd turn it all the way to like 140. So,
Yeah,
so never have.
the with my friend, you know how when life gets in the way, yeah, stroke, but you still have in different ways. She was dropped 6 months, and she had her baby, now 3 months old, and she was dropped off at her mom's, and he didn't come back. She was it's a lot of trouble. So in the beginning of her stroke, friendship was paramount. She needed a friend to talk to cry to, with, and just to be there in friendship was a big deal. So listening to the problems, she had a 3-month-old baby and she was just dropped off at her mom's because babies are expensive and she was too much trouble. So when life gets in the way, it's not easy, but friendship is important. That's all I know, as opposed to having to be a counselor or having to be knowledgeable. Being there as a friend matters.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
probably the thing you can do, Adam may probably will agree with this. Probably the most important thing you can do for anybody is to listen to them, to truly
Mhm.
listen to them. And that includes making them feel like you're listening to them, because you can be over there listening, but if they don't feel like you are, then you aren't, in a sense. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would completely agree, Mindy.
Yeah. Support system is so important, especially anyone's life, period, So regardless if you having some health challenges or just some regular life situations, a support system is key to anything, and that's why we have to build stronger relationships. And I think a lot of stroke survivors, they isolate themselves. You have to, like I said, having these communities around here now, you have to learn how to release some of the stresses in our lives. Our human body, the body keeps score of every type of stress that we're going through. So like when we went through this traumatic situation in life, this trauma builds in your body. So, and we have to somehow release this trauma, and just like what Mindy was talking about, having that support system, knowing that someone is here for you, you know, because like I said, I know so many people that just, okay, I'm gonna just go into this room and just die. For one, we have to look at life on a whole different perspective. That yes, you had a setback or a challenge in our lives, but we have to say, okay, this happened. Let's move forward. I think look at the alarming statistics about people in life. 87% of people are negative. So you have to be that 13% to say, okay, this will happen. I have to find something inside of me to move forward, and continue. I think when we have these platforms, to be able to have that support system, then share this information, like with Mindy and her friend and stuff like that. And we have to really pinpoint this. This is not rocket science. This is just showing somebody that we really care instead of thinking about some profit and growth or money. And that's what's wrong with our society, because it's about money. And we got to really think about, who do you care about?
All righty.
Yeah.
Well, anybody else got anything? Otherwise, I'm thinking we should maybe let Anna get back to her life.
Go back to the sunshine that's outside.
Is it sunny out there? Is it outside?
It is very rare in the UK, but this past couple of weeks has been on point with sunshine, and it's been great. I'm very much enjoying it.
Get
Thank
back
you,
out in the
Anna.
garden.
Yeah, in my garden. That's my place.
There's no better place than a garden. Well, everybody
Yeah,
has their own space. There's no better
yeah,
place than your own space. I happen to
yeah,
like the garden as well.
yeah.
Um,
It's great.
so,
But yeah,
uh,
it's been lovely to chat with you all, and thank you for having me.
well,
So yeah,
thank you for taking time out of your life and sharing with us. And I'll just remind everybody out there in YouTube land that all of Anna's contact information will be in the description underneath this video. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
thank you
you.
everyone.
Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can.